All right, hi everyone. My name is Dr. Jana Camillo. I am one of the directors with the Center for Equity and Post-Secondary Attainment here in California at San Diego State. We are excited to have Dr. Johnson here with us today, who's going to share about her work, specifically exploring the impact of dual enrollment programs on the college choice and career interests of future teachers of colors. So we are very excited. This is a continuation of our ongoing series that we've had. And with no further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Paul Harris.
Thank you, Dr. Camillo, and thank you all for being here. Just want to echo the sentiments already expressed about Dr. Jennifer Johnson's presence and our pleasure with that. And just wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Laura Owen, who has spearheaded this amazing work and has allowed us as co-editors, myself and Dr. Renee Mays from University of Arizona, Dr. Eric Hines from Florida State University, to participate. And what a joy it's been to participate in this way. Some amazing pieces have come through this special issue of JCA, one of which we're going to hear a lot more about today. Dr. Johnson and I were going back and forth a moment ago because I knew we knew each other somewhere. She's a fellow Terp. We both did our doctorates there at UMD, and I'm sure at some point we crossed paths there. And since then, I've been able to admire her work. And so we're going to hear from her. And we'd love on the back end to have some time for Q&A to engage the wonderful work that she has done. So again, thank you all for being here. Dr. Johnson, thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Great, thank you so much for that warm welcome and introduction, and overall for both the invitation to share our work in the Journal of College Access, but also the invitation opportunity to share the work through the webinar series that we're presented with today. So greetings everyone from near and far, or wherever you're tuning in. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I'm an assistant professor of higher education in the College of Education and Human Development at Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I am delighted to share on behalf of my team some work around a particularly unique program situated in the College of Education that really helps tackle issues around access and pathways to careers in teaching. My intentions for today is to really help elevate the work that is being done in an effort to try to build synergistic partnerships with others who are doing like type work, help us think about both the programmatic side of the work that we're doing, but also the research potentials, so that we can really talk about the short-term and long-term impact of the program. And also give some insights into the program development side for those that are really interested in how you do these kinds of programs, things to consider, things to watch out for, and then ultimately, hopefully walk away with some ideas on how to grow. Definitely will be sharing my contact information so that you can get in touch with me and the team. If you have some ideas, want to partner, want to give us a little bit of money to expand the program, all those good things. So that is my plan for today, and I'm super excited to be in community with folks. So I do have a presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and set that up. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about our program. All right, so doing that obligatory Zoom meeting. Can everyone see my slides? Question in slide view. Wonderful. Thank you for the thumbs up there, Katie. What I'm going to talk about specifically is the paper that's in the Journal of College Access, Structured Pathways, Reinforced Plans, exploring the impact of a dual enrollment program on the college choice and career interests of teachers of color as part of the series. But again, want to just kind of foreground the context. But before I can really go into giving you some highlights of the work, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the members of the team, because this is is kind of the epitome of a team project. So presented here are members of the research team who have been instrumental in helping us think about what are our research aims for this program. Just to name a couple of folks on the slide, we have Dr. Juliette Kersey, who is, for all intents and purposes, the brainchild of the program. She was instrumental in forging the partnerships between our institution and the school district to really make this program happen, as I'll talk a little bit more about going forward. We also have Joseph Paris, who is a professor in higher education and has expertise in enrollment management. And aside from being a really great thought partner in the research for the program, he's also helped with larger conversations at the university level around access to our institution and thinking about kind of diversifying the criteria through which we make admissions decisions. Before it became popular as a consequence of COVID-19, Temple University was and still is a test optional institution. And so Dr. Paris and others at the institution have really looked at the implications of that decision on our institutional kind of demographics. Additionally, other members of the team listed there are graduate students at the master's and doctoral level from Temple University. So definitely have to shout out them for their contribution and their willingness to really jump right in and really help us think about how to make the program grow and be stronger. So as highlighted with the overall series, research in best practices from an anti-racist, culturally sustaining lens are needed to provide educators the solutions needed to ensure every student has an opportunity to receive a post-secondary education. So through this session today, and aligned with the aims of the series, we share with you our research kind of hot off the presses and tips and tools needed to implement equity-based career development and post-secondary readiness options for students in the K-16 educational system. For those of you a little less familiar with our institution, just want to give you a little bit of context of where I'm situated. So again, I'm at Temple University and in the College of Education and Human Development. And specifically, Temple University is a public university located in the northern portion of the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, within a region and even a city with several post-secondary options and opportunities, including the Community College of Philadelphia and several other private institutions. But we are the only four-year public institution within the city limits. Founded in 1884, Temple University is committed to the ideals in which we were founded upon. So specifically providing access to an excellent, affordable higher education that prepares students for careers, further learning, and active citizenship, creating a collaborative community of outstanding faculty and staff who foster inclusion and encourage the aspirations of Temple students, and promoting service and engagement throughout Philadelphia, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the nation, and the world. I don't say all of that just to kind of, give a plug to my institution, although plug to the institution. But I think that context is really important, right? So if we're thinking about programmatic efforts at a university, we have to make sure that those programs have an alignment with the overall mission and vision of the institution in which we're situated. And so not only does the program that I'm going to talk about momentarily align with the goals of the College of Education and Human Development, there are also direct ties with the overarching institutional mission and the commitment of the institution to be a good citizen within our community. And so that really helped kind of shape the opportunity for both our institution and our college to have other kinds of college access initiatives prior to the program I'm going to talk about today. So specifically, folks are likely familiar with TRIO Upward Bound and TRIO Upward Bound Math and Science. Both of those programs are situated within the College of Education and Human Development and is under the purview of Dr. Kersey, who I mentioned earlier. And we have other initiatives that are more kind of ground roots efforts to try to ensure that across the university, those of us with a commitment to access and success know what we're all doing and kind of can support one another. So we initiated a couple years back a community of practice. We called it the College Access Community of Practice. That has really, again, tried to build that synergy across the different units at our university that have different types of programs for pre-college students, or really are focused on first-year students and their successful transition. And 2 years ago, that group began to initiate activities related to National First Generation College Student Celebration. So every November, we put on a host of activities for the campus community that celebrate first generation college students and their successes. So that's a little bit about the context in which you're situated. And that really, again, kind of shapes the opportunity that we had to develop the program. So given that, we have kind of two big concerns that led to the development of the program that I'm going to be sharing today. So first, overall kind of concern is access. So as a faculty member in higher education, whose job is it to think about college access and success and path and persistence and retention, all that good stuff, I was really drawn to thinking about, given the mission and those core values that I shared about Temple University, to what extent are we actively looking for ways for primarily students in our immediate region, so folks coming out of the school district of Philadelphia, to have access to an institution like Temple University. And so when it came to thinking about access and that opportunity, dual enrollment is one type of access program that could suit those purposes. So dual enrollment is a program where you have your high school students that are dually enrolled or concurrently enrolled in post-secondary credentials while they're still in high school. So hence the dual. And so prior to the initiation of this program, there were a few dual enrollment opportunities for students in the school district of Philadelphia, primarily out of the Community College of Philadelphia and LaSalle University, to do different programs or to take different courses. And with that kind of framework, we thought about, okay, well, it exists. What would a dual enrollment program look like if we at the College of Education and Human Development put something together? We wanted to have an intentional pathway for high school students to get from the, to get into, to have access to classes and coursework. So that was really intentional, really trying to think about basically making it easier for students to take classes on our campus. We also thought about, if we're going to go ahead and develop a dual enrollment program, we really want students to have an opportunity to not just earn college credits, but to really gain collegiate experiences. So for us, it wasn't enough to take classes. One dual enrollment model is where we would hire faculty from the university level to teach specific college courses within the high schools in the district. And because, it's our curriculum, the students would get credit. But we didn't want that model. We wanted really an opportunity for the students to come to our campus and really get a more holistic, authentic collegiate experience. That in turn would help students have a better sense of how to navigate the college environment. Everything from kind of getting from point A to point B, and to, where to sit in a larger lecture hall, how to kind of make that quick stop at the food truck and get to class on time, all that stuff that's associated with being a kind of college student. We wanted them to get a sense and feel of that. And additionally, we wanted them to, like I said before, really have that authentic experience by being in class with other undergraduates. So the goal was to make sure that the classes were on our main campus at Temple University, making sure that they were had opportunities to be enrolled with other undergraduate students, so that it's, again, authentic and that students really feel like they are a part of the campus community. In addition to that, we also wanted to make a specific strategy to recruit and retain folks from diverse backgrounds into different college and career pathways. So given that we're situated under the College of Education, the immediate tag was, oh, well, how can we also use this program as an opportunity to expose folks to opportunities in our majors and ultimately become educators. So that is kind of where that second layer of our program really took off. So again, give a little bit more context in thinking about teachers of color in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. As many folks are really aware, we are facing a shortage of certified teachers across the United States and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And this has persisted for several years. And of course, it's been exacerbated by the pandemic, where even our certified teachers are leaving the classroom for other career opportunities, or folks are retiring early. So within this teacher shortage, it's also acknowledging that there are racial gaps, right? In terms of the racial backgrounds of the folks that are teaching are not matching the folks that they're working with. And consequently, the majority of our public school students in Pennsylvania have little or to no experience with a teacher of color over their K-12 career. So kind of some of the demographics, only 6% of public school teachers in Pennsylvania are teachers of color, while 36% of public school students identify as students of color. And that's one of the largest disparities in the country. So again, knowing that we're committed to access and we want to create access opportunities, and knowing that we're in a college of education, we really tried to bridge those two areas and needs by using the opportunity to work with the School District of Philadelphia to develop a dual enrollment program. We wanted it specifically to open up ways to address this gap. So we started going through the literature on dual enrollment, teacher education pathways, strategies for kind of creating good programs, and that led to the Temple Education Scholars Program. It was a lot of buildup for what the program is actually called. So Temple Education Scholars Program began 2018-2019 school year with a cohort of 12 scholars, and we've been growing ever since. So I just want to spend a little bit of time giving you some context of the program, because some folks might be interested in that if you have a like type program, if you're developing something, and then go into and share some of the highlights of one of the research studies based on the outcomes. So Temple Education Scholars Program, again, is a collaboration between the school district and the College of Education. And there are a couple of components that are of note. So first, it is a year-long experience. Students are with us from mid-August all the way through June. And through the program, they have the opportunity to take 15 college credits, up to 5 3-credit courses. And they also, as a part of the program, have significant wraparound supports from professional and student staff members. Of note, the program is no cost to students or their families. So the cost for the program, and there's always a cost, right, is taken up by the school district and the College of Education and Human Development. And so there is no out-of-pocket expense except for perhaps the occasional, snack from the food truck after class. There's no expense for the student for participating in the program. And the program has these major components that are, aligned with traditional dual enrollment, pre-college activities, tutoring, mentorships, exposure to university resources, academic advising, and then college financial aid and scholarship coaching. So again, the program is really designed to look at both sides, the access piece through the dual enrollment, and also as an opportunity to encourage more students of color to enter teacher preparation programs. The components of the program are aligned again with best practices. So And this was all very, very intentional. So the programs began recruiting the first class spring of 2018 to start in August 2018. But kind of while we were recruiting the group, Dr. Kersey was mindful about bringing in myself, Dr. Paris, and others to really think about what are the programmatic components that are necessary to have a successful program. So using that stakeholder feedback from us, using stakeholder feedback from counselors, principals, parents, we try to be intentional of making sure that the program was not just going to be kind of a good experience for students and, you know, kind of do well in the courses that we are laying out for them, but also really build a strong foundation for them to transition into full-time undergraduate study. So really briefly, the components, just to kind of emphasize the unique pieces of the program. Of course, we have our academic and social components that we know are critically important to having any kind of college access program. But what was particularly important in really getting the program going and getting the buy-in from counselors and principals to kind of allow their students to even participate in the program was really around these program tenets listed. So operational scheduling, how do we make sure that the students are able to be with us all year round? So we had to roster the students in a particular way so that they would have all of their required 12th grade courses in the mornings, and then in the afternoon, they transition to Temple University's campus, and then they take their class or two classes at Temple. And those classes had to fit with their classes at Temple had to fit with their requirements to complete their high school degree. So it was a lot of coordinating around scheduling, which also one of the limitations of the program meant that we really could only have the program available to folks who could kind of physically get from their high school to Temple University. So we are kind of limited geographically by only being able to partner with students who can make that commute from their school to Temple University and then back home. Also, just that wraparound support we knew was critically important. So again, going back to how in the past there's been some dual enrollment opportunities sponsored through the School District of Philadelphia, there was some concerns that the opportunity was there, but the support wasn't. So students would have an opportunity to take a 3-credit math class and go to an institution to take that 3-credit math class, but there were no kind of extra supports or sometimes even kind of clear acknowledgement that the students in the program were in high school and just kind of not one of the kind of other students in the class. And so that that also meant that there were some students who were in these dual enrollment opportunities that didn't really understand the consequences of not doing well for that course, because that course is necessary for their high school graduation as well. These aren't, these aren't extra classes. These are classes that are a part of what they need for their high school profile. So we were critically concerned about investing in a lot of wraparound supports to make sure that the students had that understanding of the implications of being a dual enrollment student, the implications of taking a college course, that transcript is going to follow you throughout the rest of your collegiate experiences, but then also have that just-in-time kind of guidance to make sure that everything's okay. And then affordability. So as I mentioned before, the program is paid through the School District of Philadelphia and the College of Education and Human Development. And there's 15 credits. And the 15 credits is intentional because with 15 credits, that's one full semester's worth of courses. And so, if everything goes the way that we would design it to go, a student would be eligible to graduate from college a semester early. So not only are they, kind of getting this really in-depth support kind of leading up to them transitioning to college, but they would be able to save in a semester's worth of books and tuition and housing and all that good stuff that comes with paying for college by graduating a semester early and starting their career earlier. So ultimately, we have these components, and we really wanted to make sure that we were helping with students college knowledge, and really, again, cultivating that college going identity, so that once they became a college student, they really felt that they had the tools to be successful. Okay. So what I want to do now is talk a little bit about the some of the research that we've done in terms of the short-term outcomes of the program. And I'm specifically going to focus on the paper that was highlighted in the Journal of College Access. And I see one of our co-authors popped in to say hi, Dr. Paris. And so just want to share some highlights from that research. So in that paper, we had two main research questions. How do Temple Education Scholar participants develop academic and career interests in teaching? And how do TES participants make educational choices related to their career aspirations? So as I mentioned before, we started the program in 2018, 2019. And so 3 cohorts have completed the program. The 4th cohort, the 2021, 2022 cohort, will be finishing up mid-June. And the next cohort, the 5th cohort, just had their orientation and will be starting this August. So although the program was designed with an opportunity to have a pathway to teaching, we recognize that not all of our students have an interest in teaching. So even still, we wanted to make sure that we had a good understanding for those who do have an interest in teaching, kind of what led them to our program, what can we do to support those interests, and maybe what we can do differently going forward to kind of increase the numbers of students who enter TES with that interest in teaching. So overall, over the first 3 cohorts, we're in the process of doing the data analysis with the cohort that's wrapping up. Out of the approximately 12 students per cohort, 9 from the first 3 cohorts identified an interest in teaching. And so we specifically engaged them in interviews to learn a little bit more about kind of that interest, and try to get a sense of how the program really helped shape those interests. So specifically from this demographic profile chart, I'm going to share a little bit about, and the paper goes into this more in detail as well, a little bit more about the perspectives from Morgan, from Hawa, and from Vin. So Morgan is a participant in our first cohort from 2018, 2019. They are currently a staff member for the Temple Education Scholars Program and majoring in early childhood education at the institution. And then additionally, we have Hawa, who was in our 2020-2021 cohort, who is pursuing a secondary education English major, and Vin, who is pursuing a secondary education math major. The interesting component of just kind of thinking about these cohorts is also acknowledging, that pandemic business that kind of interrupted our lives and still has had implications on kind of how we engage in the world. And so our first cohort was pre-pandemic. Our second cohort, their spring, from March on was disrupted. So kind of right in that tail end of the spring term. But then our third cohort was all virtual. So they did the entire program virtually. And then the 4th cohort that we're finishing up on data analysis now, they were on campus all year. They had kind of a couple of classes that were asynchronous or hybrid, but they were physically on campus from August until June. So I'm going to give you a little bit of highlights from Morgan, Hawa, and Vin's experiences. So in thinking about our research design, I know other papers in the special issue also drew upon the social cognitive career theory as well. So I'll just give some highlights. So this theory was helpful in helping us understand the potential conditions that promote or inhibit pathways to career success. It has an emphasis on self-efficacy expectations, outcome expectations, as well as interest. And it provided us an opportunity to think about how those interests were framed in that environmental context, and how a variety of conditions shape the extent to which folks are willing to act on their interests. So in a nutshell, being interested in being a teacher was not enough to actualize the behavior. So we were interested in some of those other factors that would shape their intent, their interest and intent to become an educator. So for data collection, we engaged in semi-structured interviews with emphasis on kind of key areas around formation of career aspirations, their perceptions of a good teacher, their decisions about enrolling, both applying to enrolling in college, and kind of our role in the program's role in kind of all of those components. The interviews were held over the phone or Zoom, and we're about 40 minutes, though in addition to the actual semi-structured interviews, we of course were engaging with the students year round. And then that's really important in terms of analysis. So although we had these transcripted interviews, we had access to their performance in their different courses. We used the model to kind of code what we were seeing in their interview responses. We also had to examine our positionality. So all of the folks that were involved in the research had, not all of us, but many of us had critical connections to the program. So myself, I actually am an instructor for the first program, the first course in the program. So they start the program with me. And that has been consistent for every cohort, that their very first class is a general education course that I teach. So I already have a level of rapport and background knowledge about the students, that it was important that we didn't kind of, in qualitative research, a lot of the critique is around the extent to which our biases and perceptions shape the process. So we really had to lean into that to say, well, yes, like this is what they're saying in their interviews. And this is maybe what they said as a comment in class. How am I making sure that I'm leaning in on their perceptions of their stories, and not kind of using all of that other stuff that we know about them to shape our analyses. So that was a really important component of the process. Okay, so findings. So in the time that we have left before kind of engaging in some thoughts and dialogues, I wanted to highlight the three major themes that emerged from this analysis of kind of the short-term impact of the program. The themes were around first, recognizing that the students came into the program with a college-bound mentality. Their responses also showed that they had pre-program interest in teaching explicitly, and that really kind of showed up in some of the examples that they used. And then finally, this last thing, structure pathways, reinforced plans, is really where they talk about the influence and impact of being in the program on thinking about their next steps. So each student that was in the program, and this can be considered across the board, not just the folks in this subset, could be considered high achievers based on their proclivity to seek advanced curricular opportunities, or their prior history and solid academic performance in high school. Yet they had different levels of access to support that promoted the formation of interest in a career in teaching. So specifically for these three folks that you can read more about in the paper, it was important to recognize that although they were high achievers, although they had that strong academic performance, they weren't all getting the same kind of messages around what was the quote unquote right career opportunity for them. And so they had to grapple with a lot of mixed messages. And so given that, although they probably would have attended college without Temple Education Scholars, because again, just even applying to our program, it's a year long, it's 15 credits, it's a lot of work. to do that kind of implies that you were already, thinking about college going. So although they likely would have gone to college without TES, the certainty of whether and where they would have pursued a degree in teaching may not have crystallized without our program. So again, they really talked about really grappling with being an educator, and being in the program helped them kind of crystallize that as their next step. And those understandings of next steps really facilitated through several components of the program, as well as opportunities to work specifically with the staff and kind of engage in some of those questions through conversation with our staff. Okay. So first, just a snippet for some direct quotes from participants. The first one is related to college-bound mentality. So this quote is from Morgan, who is talking about just kind of grappling with being in a dual enrollment programs. And I will read this for folks. So being able to take college courses as a senior sometimes was stressful because I had my high school classes, I had my college classes, and I was working at the time. That kind of forced me to procrastinate sometimes, but also made me motivate myself to keep going because I knew I wanted to finish the program. I wanted to graduate high school. So this quote was used as an example of kind of that acknowledgement of kind of all of the responsibilities, the stresses, the conflicting priorities that the students were managing, but then that ultimate kind of internal kind of drive to keep going, because their ultimate goal was not only to graduate high school, but they wanted to finish the program. They wanted to be, have that heads up for college. And the quotes for that portion of the paper really kind of highlight the sense of, I'm doing this now because it'll help me for college. So they definitely came into the program knowing that college was that next step, and they were concerned that, well, concern probably isn't the best word. They were aware that it's going to be hard. So being in a program like this was going to fortify them against what was coming. The next quote, which I think aligns well with thinking about the series in terms of thinking about developing pipelines to careers, is in acknowledging the ways that folks thought about their interest in teaching before being in the program. So Ben shares, I want to be a high school math teacher. I want to have a strong impact on students. I often help my peers who are struggling, and it feels really interesting to me. So Ben talks about experiences that got them thinking about, maybe teaching could be a good next step for me. And through that experience, just working with their peers and kind of that satisfaction getting from that experience, it really kind of buoyed their interest in pursuing a career as an educator. And then Hawa talks about, I definitely don't think I would be the kind of person that I am without the teachers. So really also thinking about kind of the impact of the educators. She talks a lot about building kind of relationships and connections with teachers beyond just the year that she's in a program. And so that really helps her think about, what made a good teacher and what kind of teacher she wanted to be. The next theme is around the structured pathways piece. So this theme highlights the ways that each of these students, as I mentioned, were college bound. They wanted to go to college. But then they talked about different levels of resources available to them in their high schools. So the first quote, we don't have a lot of counselors. So I think TES is even more important because a lot of students don't have that support system at their schools. This particular student was talking about basically that ratio of counselors to students, and they were at a fairly well-resourced schools in the grand scheme of things when we think about the context of the school district of Philadelphia, but even still, you can't get that personalized attention that you can when there's 12 students and 12 staff members to support you. Similarly, another quote, TES helped with my college essays. Then they also helped with how to fill out the FAFSA and how to apply for scholarships as well. So it wasn't just about, kind of going through the college checklist, but really helped how to do it, why to do it, how to even advocate for yourself to get more financial aid. These were actual kind of intentional, intrusive advising practices, if you will, to borrow that language, for how the TES staff help those students navigate the college choice process. And then finally, Morgan shares, I was used to Temple's atmosphere, campus, the classroom, and some of the professors. So it really solidified my decision about coming to Temple, which I am so happy about now. So they were talking about how all of that support, all of the access to the information, access to people, access to processes, the food trucks really helped her think about or see herself in Temple as a full-time student. And that support on the institutional level aligned with familial support really solidified her pathway to coming to Temple and majoring in education. A counterpoint to also think about in terms of some of the findings from our program. So again, we're a dual enrollment program that has a dual commitment to helping provide access to students to post-secondary options and opportunities, but also, we do want folks to become teachers. But the findings really highlight that we weren't necessarily kind of trying to indoctrinate students into becoming educators or even coming to Temple. And so these next couple of quotes kind of highlight that. So Howard describes the following: I've definitely wanted to go to an HBCU since 8th grade when I found out what they were. Doing all this anti-racist work makes me want to be at an HBCU even more because it's so draining. I want to be around Black people. I'm a little tired. And so Howard talked about this within the context of this is 2020 going into 2021. Students are really dealing and grappling with the racialized realities of living in America. She was really involved at the high school level and in the community level around activism. Through that process leading into senior year, really decided they wanted to go to an HBCU. And so again, we're an access program. So we didn't just kind of disengage with Howard because she said she didn't want to come to Temple. We said, hey, if you want to go to HBCU, let's make that happen. So actually the second quote reinforces what Howard said. So she said at the interview, I love Temple University, but I need to be at an HBCU. And TES said, well, this is where you want to go. Let's try to make it work. So again, really reinforcing their plans and affirming those plans. But fortunately, she is majoring in education at that HBCU. And then finally, Vin talked about just that kind of notion of like trying to figure out what they wanted to do and why. So he shared, after having conversations with TEF staff, faculty, and mentors, I figured out I just wanted to be a pharmacist because of my parents and the salary. I want to be a teacher. And so at the beginning of the program, they really were, just kind of in the program for the foundational knowledge to be ready for college broadly. But because they already had that seed of interest in being an educator, and that we were reinforcing and affirming that interest through the program activities and conversations, that by the end of the program, not only did they decide to major in education and continue on at Temple University as an education major this past year, but they were able to have conversations with their family around why that was important to them and get their support. So in closing, there's so much potential of the program. And, again, we're just really scratching the surface. We're a fairly new program, having started in 2018. Every cohort is different. Every cohort provides new opportunities to really look at our practices. And so that's why, again, it's really important to think about the context of our institution, the ways that we set up partnerships, the ways that we're intentionally talking to students, school counselors, principals, teachers about their experiences so that we can grow. So we do recognize that it's really important to build these partnerships early, as we envision ourselves to be around for a bit. We should be working with 5th, 6th, 7th grade teachers to kind of build up a pool so that they know when they get to 12th grade, they should be thinking about applying to TES, and we can really reinforce some of those interests through the program. We also noticed that identity was particularly important in the ways that they talked about motivations for being an educator and commitment to their own communities. So we want to build that in more to the overall courses that they're exposed to and just some of the activities to ultimately help folks think about in what ways they can be support to their home communities as an educator or in other ways in the other careers that they're interested in. To make sure that we have more opportunities to kind of crystallize that salient to being a teacher, we want to make sure that we're including more fieldwork experiences during our dual enrollment program, which will be great for our folks that are already interested in teaching, but it's also helpful for those not interested in teaching per se, but are interested in those helping professions. And really thinking about kind of how we're all interconnected, whether you want to be a teacher or whether you will be in a role of an educator throughout your life. And then ultimately, we need to make sure that we are still aware of those other barriers to careers in education and teaching, specifically around certification requirements and fieldwork requirements and licensure requirements, because at the end of the day, we can continue to build the pipeline, but if we can't make sure that the students can also kind of navigate that last layer of the pipeline to earn their certification in a particular state or commonwealth, then we're really not doing students full service. All right. So in conclusion, really are very, very appreciative of the opportunities to be involved in a program and a project that is alive. And I think this work really highlights the importance of kind of really talking across functional areas, faculty and staff working together, different units on the campus, from financial aid and advising and all other units really working together to kind of understand these pathways. Because again, we really hope to grow. Our first cohort of program completers will be eligible to graduate as early as December. So this is one of our graduates who is on track to graduate in December. And these students will need to connect with mentors and others to really help support them in their career of choice. So we are super grateful to the university and the school district for their support. We know that dual enrollment programs are expensive, they're labor intensive, they require a lot of coordination. And we do hope to be able to continue in qualitative and quantitative investigation of both the short and long-term implications of the program so that we can grow, because these programs are critically important. So we do hope that folks who are interested in this work, connect with us, reach out. My contact information is available. And we also have 2 published articles that give a little bit more insights to the work. But this is hopefully just a conversation starter that we can engage with other folks to continue to provide services to students who will continue to shape the world. So thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Johnson, and thanks to your entire team, some of whom I know are here as well. Thank you for this just amazing work. It's incredible added value to the literature in this space. I couldn't help but think back to my own personal experiences in high school and then as a school counselor, as you were sharing, and what I remember reading and thinking, yes, intentional structures and supports do wonders. And I appreciated how you unpacked that in the paper and in this presentation, and even gave context today for even how Temple Education Scholars got started. I think that was instructive in its own right for those who want to emulate what you all have kicked off there. It's amazing. And so thank you again to you and your team. I'm going to drop in the chat for those who may have joined after the last link that I posted in there,
Mhm,
the link to the entire issue for those who don't have access to it, which will include this piece that you should read in its entirety if you haven't already. We do have a few minutes for questions from the entire group. I want to acknowledge again, one of the co-editors I was privileged to work with who has joined us, Dr. Renee Mays, who is welcome to also chime in with thoughts and questions. And I'll kick off with the first and then open it up for others who might want to chime in with their own. So again, thank you. I have too many notes to even try to look at. Probably the one with the big asterisk was food trucks on the way to class. Like I needed that. I needed to be on campus earlier. But anyways, I digress. I was thinking about like the self-efficacy of these students. There were so many thoughts floating in my head from, Vin, who wanted to be a pharmacist, and then the program really sort of empowered him to sort of move forward with what his interests were. And it made me think about, just generally speaking, the self-efficacy of all the participants and where they were prior to coming into the program, and how, if at all, you saw that needle move, if you will, on that front. Because, and again, in aligning with the theory that you chose with, SCCT and that sort of self-efficacy part of it, I wondered about that. So I thought I'd kick off with that question, and then I'll be quiet and let others ask their own.
Thank you. That was a really great question. And so one of the things that we are trying to do for this next cohort, this fourth cohort, is actually give them the inventory before they start the program. So we are looking to secure the inventory to give them in August, and then have it re-administered at the end of the program so that we can see the needle move. Because it's like one of those things, it's like we noticed it's something there. So now we need to collect the data on it, because we're simultaneously enacting the program and thinking about, okay, what are the research questions and things that we need to be intentionally gathering data around. So that is actually the next wave of data to be collected for this fourth cohort coming up, to really see that change and what that might mean in terms of our programming impact. So we're on the same page.
Indeed, I love it.
Hey, if I might jump in,
yes.
Paul and Jennifer, you're absolutely, I think you kind of premised this of there's a whole bunch of stuff happening in the country that's impacting education. And I'm curious what ways you see this program, the dual enrollment program, kind of adjusting or kind of pivoting in a world of anti-CRT, anti-school, anti-everything, right? Like to still perhaps give an honest rendering of what schooling is like, but also say, but we still need you.
Another great question. And also I'll just acknowledge that Dr. Paris has joined us. So, if you'd like this response, obviously jump right in. And then one of our graduate students who was a part of the data analysis team, Elizabeth Jackson, is on the line as well. So just to start to say, like, we're still working through it. We're still working through it. I think kind of the last year or so has either kind of energized folks around going into education, or it has kind of really put up a roadblock to say, hey, I don't know if that's the pathway that I want to go. And I think that it's also important to layer this on to the folks that are in our program are high achievers. So they have all these different opportunities ahead of them, and they're being encouraged to engage in the most lucrative opportunity, to be quite frank, particularly for our students of color. They are kind of working against the internal pressures between, like, I should go towards X field because X field has these kinds of monetary outcomes, or that these fields have kind of different kinds of material gains, versus like their interest in and their desire to go into a field of education which is mirrored in controversy right now and historically. So we're still working through it. We are working with a couple of community partners to have intentional workshops in session with our students to try to model and have them working kind of year long with folks that are kind of in the trenches working to kind of navigate these politics around curriculum within the city of Philadelphia. They're also taking a class, Education for Liberation, that really like gets them thinking about the realities of the inequities in the school, so they can talk about it through the lens of their own experiences, but they're also, you know, getting a more global perspective. So we're trying to kind of infuse, and, you know, we're either, you know, kind of watering the seed or we're planting the seed, acknowledging that you can be an educator at any point in time in your life. It doesn't have to be right now. So we're still hoping to kind of plant the seed through the programmatic efforts, so that we might have some career changers down the road who maybe later on want to really kind of really jump back in and help in that way.
I appreciate that. I know and there's not, you know, the best answer for a question of how do you respond when the world's on fire? Like it keeps on being on fire in lots of different ways, but we're trying, like we're doing something. And I appreciate that. And also, right, you're absolutely right that people can find their way into education at any time in life. I, you know, am talking to my mother, and she is 63, and talking about like, oh, I kind of like, I still have that urge, right? Or that yearning to be a teacher, like, especially with the little ones. And I'm like, all right, like you can retire, or you can, all right, like, let's have a second or third career.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that very much.
And those folks are critically important in helping to shape the field, right? The nature of the field. And also kind of in response to a comment that was earlier in terms of thinking about the counseling side, one point that I didn't mention is that our program, our graduate level staff in our program are in our counseling psychology program. And we also work with students in our school psychology program. So we're also kind of thinking about that training for the counseling psych and school psych folks that is important for helping us grow and expand on both sides. So what do we need to be doing in our program, but what kind of professional experiences do we need to be giving to those students before they go into the field full time? So that aside from the SCCT inventory side of the research, we're also going to be engaging more specifically with those graduate students who have worked in our program to talk a little bit about their training and their expectations for being in the field, and, you know, how this program gives them some senses of what's to come. So, you know, we're kind of doing a lot of things, and that's why having a team is important, because folks are interested in different elements of those bigger pieces, so that we can be good stewards of the resources that we are given to do the program as well.
Well, I am going to close our time today, which has been a rich time. I think so much of what you shared and have written about gives us fodder for policy, research, practice. I kind of chuckled as you talked about work, you know, we're working through. I thought, man, if this is working through, I need to work through some more, because there's already a whole lot already there for us to hold on to. And to that end, there's so much, as you said, that you could just see the trajectory of it. And so thank you for this work your team has already done. And thank you for what you're committed to keep doing, because we'll keep consuming it. It's really good. So thanks for your time. I'm going to kick it, I think, to Dr. Camilo right now for some last announcements before we close out.
All right, so I'm still on mute 2.5 years later, and I'm still on mute. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, Dr. Johnson. I'm gonna also add the link to the center where we will be uploading the recorded webinar soon, as well as you can also access the other webinars as well as the blogs for the series. So it's a great opportunity to share this with your practitioners, because a lot of the content that we are sharing with our community is really for our practitioners. So feel free to visit SEPA's website. And that is all. Thank you again, everyone. I'm going to stop recording.